Nick Anderson,
Hi, Sam.
how you doing?
I'm all right, thanks.
Welcome to Tasty Humans, here, powered by Watson, here in Media One Hotel. Thank you very, very much for doing this.
Good.
For the sake of everybody who's going to watch, the millions of people, who are you? What do you do?
The worst question to start with.
Yeah, there you go.
Nick Anderson. I run hospitality talent solutions here in the UAE and Saudi. We have an office in Riyadh. As a person, which is what this is all about as well, outgoing, sporty, love people, try and help people as part of our job. It's that, but also in life. And I've lived here for 13 years now, pretty much, with a few small breaks in between. Yeah, love the UAE, been here a long time, and along the way meet people like yourself, which is why we're here, I guess.
So what made you come out here then?
The weather, solely.
Definitely plays a part.
Cricket is a first love, really, and I was travelling at weekends from London up to Bourton-on-the-Water, which was my club, and lo and behold, we had 8 games rained off one summer. So I rang an old boss that was based out here and said, "Can you get me a job?" She said, "Send your CV. This is relevant to recruitment, I guess.
Yeah.
Send your CV and I'll pass it on to the right person." I'm like, "Really? It works like that? Can you not just get me a job?" So I went through an interview process, and here we are, 13 years later, for like everyone, cliche, a 2-year stint in Dubai. But yeah, it was purely the weather, to be honest. I'd never been here before.
Yeah, and for people that have never been here, the weather is, especially coming from the UK, not that we're going to start talking about
No.
but it is an enormous benefit, do you know what I mean, to being here in Dubai.
Yeah, I like the outdoors. I like being able to plan things and seeing friends socially, and playing cricket. The sun's important for that sport. So yeah, you've literally... I don't enjoy September, and I'm glad it's the 1st of October tomorrow.
Yeah. Humidity's
high in September. For me, October through to the end of May, I think it's just perfect here.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So I would ask, because I think recruitment, we're in it in different ends. I always need people, and we're always reaching out to people like yourselves to send us people. So, I think a great place to start with this is how much has recruitment changed since you started getting into it? Like you said, send me your CV. I'll pass it on to the relevant people. You come for an interview, and you see this, I think, from an interesting perspective. As we were talking downstairs, I was like, I want a Ferrari, but I'll only pay for a Mini. Do people think they're Ferraris, but they're actually Minis? And sort of, how do you navigate this?
I don't think people have changed, and that's what everyone forgets. I think technology has changed. So when I started 20 plus years ago, on Friday, we would have X amount of people we'd met in the week, and their CV needed to go to clients. So we would put their CVs in envelopes, lick the stamps, put them on, and walk to the post office at 4:30. They'd go in the post office, and it would be after work drinks on a Friday. And that was it. Emails were at a minimum, if at all, if I remember correctly. There was no LinkedIn, so there was no social media channels. So you literally lick the stamps in the post box, off for a social end of week gathering, and you didn't look at anything to do with your job until Monday morning. And then the carnage began for a whole week. And I think that the change really has been the technology side, but the people are the same. It's a human being. They need a job. The technology allows people to look themselves now, which kind of can cut recruiters out. And what I would say to that is, I think recruiters can add value from a client side. I think trusting employers to handle your data with confidentiality is a topic, especially in the Middle East. It tends to get out. I think from a candidate side, having someone that can take a bit of the heat out of negotiations or presenting people. And then there's the network side of things, which, a network is built over time. You don't just acquire a network overnight. And I think a network can be the difference between getting you an interview and not. At times, we have the ability to talk to a client with no CVs involved, encourage our clients to see these individuals, and lo and behold, our job is to match personalities. I think you get to a certain level, if you've gone that far in your career, you can do your job. There's no questioning. A CV doesn't say, "Oh, can you do it or not?" we're here to ensure that personality match is with the manager. Can that individual work with that manager? And that's where our skills can save a lot of time and money, I guess.
So you deal specifically with what levels are you dealing with? So that's a much better way of putting it.
Yeah, I would say, we're hospitality specialists, as the name suggests. I would say different times of the year we have different levels of jobs. So we are very much not restricted to hotels, but I would say 80% of our business is within the hotel operations. This time of year, people are looking for fast, available talent as we go into the season. So
you say that in a way where, they're looking, but maybe it's not existing.
Yeah, sometimes. I think, our job as a business is to have people available, and we're not the first port of call. In-house teams and HR directors in the property or in the operation are the first channel. We do cost money to use, and it's what value we have. So speed is a big thing. So if we're not reactive and quick for our clients, then it becomes less of a percentage chance of making placements. So I think from that perspective, our value add has to be around the speed and giving quality. But going back to your question, I would say, mid-management and upwards. I would love to service everyone. It comes down to our resource capability, to be honest. I think all recruitment businesses should have a niche and a specialization. I think if you don't, I don't think the client or the candidate gets the best service. So I would say mid-management, hotels would be and restaurant operations would be our strength. And then all the way up to C-suite. We're a young business, I guess, 7 years old now in February. And with that, each year we get more senior roles. And each year you leverage those relationships to get more junior roles. And this time of year, we're going into season in the Middle East, and people want mid-management staff. So that's where we're at. I can tell you patterns. And if you want to ask about patterns later on to when people hire and let go of people and bonuses are paid and when the number of jobs go up for certain categories, absolutely can talk about that. But
let's talk about it now. So yeah, no, because I am very interested in the patterns and the trends, where I do think that, I've always said to people, it's a very, very, very bad idea in the hospitality industry to quit your job before Christmas. If you don't hand your notice in October, because I don't think it speaks very well to a potential employer that you're kind of, as a term that I suppose is incorrect, but I do use it all the time, jumping ship. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like you're jumping ship before one of the busiest periods. It just shows, I think, a lack of understanding. You go through the busy periods and then you can assess it afterwards. But, am I right? Or what are the patterns like from your side?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've got, we talk about the pyramid of levels that you're at in terms of number of jobs. If you're at the top of the pyramid, there are less jobs at sea level. There's probably only 10 jobs in the world for some people that they can have. And, lower down the pyramid you are, mid-management, there should in theory be more jobs at that level because each employer's got more jobs available. When I look at hospitality trends in the Middle East, we're going into the season now. Let's just talk F&B, where you're an absolute specialist and you've seen it from both sides, from an independent perspective and hotel side. I think right now, if you haven't got a job by now, you've probably only got a month. And then, people are reluctant to hire in November.
Do candidates understand that? Do they understand why we're like that? Because it's about, you got to be through the door, trained up, sort of ready to hit Q4. Instead of, hiring through November. We don't really, I would definitely say, I don't have time to bed in any type of manager, supervisor in a November, December. We need you, as far as we can get you to that point. Do people understand that, or do they just think they can come and go, sort of at any time?
I think it's really difficult to judge a whole group of people at that level. That's for sure. I wish it was a rule because, it would be a lot easier for me to explain that. I think everyone's got different circumstances, and you sort of touched on the fact that, individuals shouldn't be leaving jobs. Sometimes it's out of their hands.
Yeah, true.
I think when you look at people in the market, generally, if you're good at what you do, you'll get a job at any time of the year at this level. When I look at this year, which is a great example, we've had the fear of COVID, and it's very real. The UAE has done a great job at absolutely bedding this country in for stability during COVID and after.
100%.
And
100%.
I sat there worried whether I'd be in a job, whether I'd have to move, or whether I'd have to go and be employed again. And COVID was very real for that. And I think the UAE has given a platform for growth, and it exposed the UAE to showing what a great place this is to be and have a career or bring a family. And we can talk about, senior people bringing their family over here later. But when I look at what COVID did, it created jobs, bizarrely, which it shouldn't have. And you go through that cycle over the last few years, and actually it's continued to be very stable, if not grow year on year. So you come into the market and there are jobs available for good people. Every year, I think there are individuals that move here and they come in November. What do you do?
Yeah, fair enough.
So I think as an employer's perspective, my guidance to you is look at the talent that's available. Yes, if you come in and you need training in November, it's very difficult. But if you've got a specialist that's moved over from a relevant business to yours, why not give them a chance? I think for you as a hiring manager that potentially cannot just sign off another X amount in budget, sometimes that's hard to explain to the senior leaders. Listen, we've got a great person. We should hire this individual because they add value to our business. Now, these are conversations that I think are real. I think businesses should be hiring the best talent available, and you can mold those people. But yeah, if you're thinking of leaving a job now in September and you're an F&B, for example, or any segment within the hotel, I think you're brave.
Yes, yeah. So when is the best time to leave your job?
Never.
I just thought that'd be an interesting question to ask, But go on, what would a non-specific answer be,
Feel valued.
Yeah.
So I want to feel valued in life, let alone as an employee. So if you're not feeling valued in your current job, the first thing I would do, which individuals are very scared to do, is have a conversation with your HR and your management. People shy away from this out of fear of losing their job because they need their income. And I would always recommend individuals to have the courage to go and speak to their HR. It should be confidential with your HR if you're worried about your line management. But ultimately, say how you feel, because businesses also need to understand how the company, from an EQ perspective, is making them feel. I've been very lucky to be involved in an app called Centimeter that you guys roll out in Media One. It's an EQ app that is effectively using volume swipe technology to allow staff to say how they feel about each other live. People don't understand how they're acting when they're busy in a pressured environment. Management and employees just don't know. So I think that's important, that you can have the courage to go and speak with your management before you make any knee-jerk decisions to resign. If you don't speak, the chances are you're going to get let go anyway, because that animosity builds up. And people know, the way your body language conducts itself in the work environment, people do know you're unhappy. So have that conversation first. Your employer might agree with you that it's not right. Then perhaps you get timelines. Time is your friend, I think, in recruitment. Not for us. Time is definitely not our friends.
No, because we need it now.
I need it now, because otherwise we're doing work for nothing.
Where's the perfect candidate? They need to start tomorrow. Yeah, why don't you have them? Yeah. I think I've said this to a couple of people at some point. Yeah. But I think what you're 100% right in it's not just about staff having the confidence to go and have the conversation. I'm even a bigger fan of and I say it to my guys, which is come and tell me. You know what I mean? Come and tell me, because you need to be big enough to hear it. And I think that people can get, I wouldn't say, I hate the word egotistical, because I think it kind of presents this sort of persona that somebody is like standing on a box, shining a light on themselves, saying it's all about me, which is not really what I think egotistical is about. I think it's more managers and people can get defensive because they're under pressure to produce results, which is not essentially their sole responsibility. So they are stressed, and they are stressed on shift. And sometimes people could feel afraid to approach them, and managers need to be approachable. But I've said to numerous people over my career that have said to me, I want to quit my job and I hate my boss and this, that, and everything else. And I actually know that, I know what their boss is like maybe. And I'm like, you do realize that when you go and hand in your notice, they're going to sit you down and ask you what's wrong. And you're going to tell them. And then what might happen is that awful moment, which is the boss thinks, why did it take you to resign to get to this point? And it changes everyone's opinion of each other. Or the boss turns around and says, why didn't you tell me, I'll go and fix this and do that and make some changes. And then the employee thinks, why did it take for me to resign for this to happen?
Yeah.
And all of that is irrelevant if you just felt comfortable to have the conversation.
Yeah, and there's a few reasons why people resign, and they're generally quite the same for everyone. I mean, you've got your personal circumstances, family, not enjoying where you're living, which is some people do relocate and don't find it's the country for them or the place for them. Pressure is very big at all levels. Generally, we have less staff and are expected to produce more in terms of results. That pressure some people don't handle. The main one for me is personality, the ability to work with the individuals around you. And I think the work environment is probably the largest part of your life, because you're in work more than you are generally with your family and friends.
100%.
So I think people forget that it's a huge part of someone's life. And if you're not enjoying that and the environment around you you're not fitting into, it's a massive reason that people find it difficult to stay in a job.
So what do you think are like the top reasons people leave their jobs? Like, as in there's that question, which is, do people leave their jobs for money or do they leave it for poor management? And sort of, in your experience, how do you think that those scales sort of weigh up?
I think as a business, you really need to be retaining staff for 2 years to get any return on your investment. We talk about how long people stay in a job on the CV, but, from an employer's perspective, if you can't retain staff for 2 years, I would generally err towards the side of that there's a problem with the way people are managed.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't, if you lose 1 or 2 staff a year, absolutely not. But if you're losing every season X amount of staff, I think there's something wrong in the workplace. Because, you've worked on the independent side.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, packages are higher.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
I'm not saying much, but they're generally higher.
Yeah.
People could
know more than me. Yeah,
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
I
think so. God, if I'm wrong there.
Well, is it? Like,
No, I'm right. I am right.
No, you are right. 100%.
So, there's always a job somewhere else for more money. I think staff really want to feel valued. Value in a human is a big thing. Loads of different ways to do that. Communicating is the first thing. We have to remember here in the Middle East, the cultural differences between employees is huge. If you're in I spent time in London in my industry, which was a very social Thursday, Friday industry. Here it's different. You need to be creative as employers for team nights out. We've got bowling, you've got theme parks, you've got coffee, you've got shisha, you've got so many different things that you could inspire your team to do.
You're right, yeah.
I think the other thing is recognition. Again,
yeah.
When we're really busy, and I'm guilty of it, I've got some great staff. They perform, they deliver. I don't really need to engage with them. They just deliver. And I sometimes, when we're really busy, forget to say thank you. Simple.
I had a very interesting thing with Centimeter when I first started working here, which was, I didn't really understand it. I'll be honest. I'm more, like I say, I more favor the face-to-face conversation. I think my personality can come across quite intense and brash sometimes, where I'm just like, yeah, just come talk to me. And maybe people are like, well, the way you act doesn't really, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And then you give them this facility to, and I think it's a little bit like TripAdvisor, where I'm like, say it to my face or don't say it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Having said that, I appreciate it much more now than I did, which you get your own personal insights, you know, and of course, I came in here, typical Sam, thinking, great, yeah, brilliant, I'm amazing at everything. Yes, it is part of me that's maybe a slight flaw. But on my insights, appreciation dropped all the way down to like D minus, you know. For those of you that don't know, it grades it in alphabetically, you know. Yeah. Came all the way, and I was like, what? Hang on a minute. Now, of course, me being me, said something ridiculous in a meeting when I first came here, which is, surely we need to educate the staff on how to use this thing. You know, a terrible thing to say. But then I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to put this to the test. And for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to walk around and say to everybody that I meet, you know, hey, how you doing? Yeah, what'd you do today? Yeah, great job, you know. And lo and behold, it started to climb up and up and up.
Got and got friends
and got all the way up to A plus. And it really, really does go to show how much appreciation, just that minor, well done, great job, the recognition affects people.
Yeah.
It's bigger than you think.
You know, we're outgoing people. We find it easy to speak to people. A spade is, for me, a spade's a spade. You say to me how I'm behaving, and I absolutely will listen to you, make my call on how I feel I've behaved, and then act accordingly. Some people don't have the confidence to view things like that, and Centimeter gives a completely anonymous way of giving feedback. And feedback's a two-way thing.
Yeah.
It does go both ways. I mean, Centimeter, you can see trends between two people, which is wonderful. We can do that face to face. Some people are fearful of that. And I think the work environment is pressured, as I've mentioned. And I think as a result, we do forget people. And if you don't have such a tool that can allow you to give anonymous feedback when we're all busy, then speaking is huge. It's our way of communicating before social media and before computers. And we had a bit of that in the day. So it's so important. And again, that's a training in itself, how to communicate with people. And that's, for me, the main reason why relationships break down. You could go back to speaking to your peers about how you feel. But I think a lot of the time is there's clashes in personality. Hospitality is the most emotional business I've recruited into. I've been lucky to work with other industries. And I think that's a value add to hospitality recruitment. Seeing how Big Four accountancy practices operate, you know, Magic Circle law firms or big practices in consultancy booths, McKinsey, etc. There's no emotion in their business because they don't deal with emotion from guests.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
Guests create a very intense environment. It can be the best environment in the world when it's all going well, but when it's difficult, it creates a very tough environment to work. So hoteliers, hospitality professionals, restaurateurs become emotional. You know, if you're working within an industry that's all about results and the results are through very tangible measurables, it's so different. So hospitality has emotion to it, which I love. I mean, I find this industry fascinating. No day is the same. Whereas other industries, you know what you're going to every day. And that's a lovely part of this. But in those industries where there's less emotion, it's a lot easier to approach because the individuals become a product of their environment. You know, it's all professional. There's less emotion. There's always emotion. But, so I think hospitality professionals would be much better to sometimes take a breath before having those conversations, or at the end of the day, take a moment to think, how was my day? How did I treat the staff? Yeah. Was I too emotional because of a situation? And the staff need to do the same. But I do feel most people are interested in moving because both parties have not got their communication channels right. And as a result of that, people feel like they need to look for change. The best leaders get an extra 6 months out of their staff. Their personality, their bond with their staff make it harder to resign. You do get more time out of people if they respect and want to work for you.
Yeah, definitely.
How you get to that respect and how you get people to want to stay and work for someone is very unique to individuals. You have to know who you've hired, but also people have to respect you. A big thing in my industry is you get to a certain level, director level, and then you just stop recruiting. You don't bill anymore, and you expect your team to do all the work for you, and they look at you not doing the same type of effort as them. And that eventually annoys you because we're generating revenue and you see someone above you getting revenue and they're not doing those hours. And it's probably the same within a hotel or a business.
I always tell managers that transition from the floor into management, which is, we've all done it. I don't like, I'll be totally honest, I don't like to hire managers that have not come from the floor. How can you talk to a waiter or a bartender in experience about, like you say, how it is to deal with guests? Because it is, you can, to echo what you've said, I've done the job 27 years, started out as a waiter, and one thing is still the same, which is I cannot tell you what's going to happen today. My guessing is getting better, but we're going to open the doors and then people are going to come in and buy our products and experience what we're doing and react in whatever way they're going to, and we have to deal with that. But I think that when managers transition from the floor into management, I say to them, you've got to be very careful about, is that you used to look at us, for instance, and think, I want to do that job because they're just standing in the corner of the room looking at everything. Yeah. And you're flying around, running your section and dealing with all that grief. And I say to people, the minute you transition, you'll realize that it stops being physical and becomes mental. That you're now actually standing there because you've got to watch everything. And you go from being responsible from what you do singularly into what your team does. And it's a much, much different animal. And again, I don't think staff sometimes realize that we can't tell you everything either. So we just look like we're standing, sitting. And I suppose now I'm kind of on this rant with this, which is another thing, is that we're supposed to not look stressed.
Yeah.
You got to keep it all inside and you got to bury it in there. And your outer shell is one of happy, smiling, regulars, yeah, woo, do your job. Because the minute we look stressed, it trickles down onto them. And I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, I think the transition from a supervisor to a manager or a manager to an assistant general manager in an F&B product is huge, because you've almost got to work. In theory, you're paid more, you should work harder. The mental stress is real that actually, if you've never been at that level, you won't understand. But those first 6 months of transitioning in, you need to work a lot harder. And it's that transition is not for everyone. Yeah. But really, you've got to show you can still run around serving and ensuring the guest is having a great experience. Then deal with 4 supervisors and make sure that they're doing their job. And then ensure that the P&L is making money and your bosses are happy. But I think if you stop doing the basics in those first 6 months, when you step up, people find that hard to take, because once upon a time, you were doing the same job as them and everyone is vying for promotion. Everyone wants to step up. And I think that's a tough period for people.
Well, if they come out of the floor, so if they get promoted within the venue they're working in, like I did and numerous people I know, it's tough. Yeah. Because suddenly you've got to go from being, let's say, one of the team to now telling everyone what to do. And you really find out who your friends are.
Yeah. And I think, telling people what to do is, you have to tell people what to do. It's how you position that with people that you already know. The ideal environment is that everyone in the team knows that you are the individual that should get that promotion. Again, in the Middle East, there's so many different cultures across that everyone thinks they deserve the promotion. I think you will know it firsthand. And it's a difficult thing to explain to people, but the speed people get promoted from one level to another, for me, is a bit quick. People expect that promotion quickly or they leave. And if I'm talking to candidates at a certain level, jumping, I think the biggest, it's a great going back actually. People jump for money in the early part of their career, because an extra 1,000 dirhams is a lot of money to someone at certain levels. I would encourage people to think why they're leaving at that level. Leaving for money is great, but you eventually hit a ceiling anyway. Loyalty eventually turns into career stability. Career stability, once you get to certain levels, ends up in you have the position to negotiate your package. I think that's when you can elevate your career to get the top senior management jobs. If you keep jumping around from X level to Y level, you'll do that a few times, and then people will start looking at your CV and wondering why you've moved. And eventually you have to settle into a job for 2, 3, 4 years to learn the skills required to be the next level.
So the thing I believe in, loyalty. You have to show loyalty towards your employer, but not really in a way where it's just to the employer. You have to show it to the role. And what I mean by that is that if you're a manager and you become more senior and you start showing 6 months here, I did this. I was guilty of this back in 2005, where I somehow ended up in a bit of career suicide and was jumping around from job to job. And I thought that my selling point was that I've got lots of experience. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I look like I'm just jumping around from job to job and I'm not going to show any, like I say, loyalty towards getting the job done. And I think that you eventually reach a point where you've got to get 2 or 3 years, 3 years definitely onto your CV to show you can go through challenging times, you can do numerous festive periods, you can do numerous busy periods, and you get that under your belt. And I don't know how many people get that these days. I don't know whether they think that 8 months is good to be a restaurant manager, when really you do want to see at least 18.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is where at certain levels money is a real topic, because people need a certain amount to live. And I think that's very real. And I think that can encourage people to move. And I firmly believe that people's lives are more important than work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult topic for employers to understand, but really people shouldn't be working to serve. They should be working for themselves to live, because we're on this earth X amount of years, and that's it. That's the reality of it. And in that time, what do you want? People need a certain amount of money to live the life they want. But the rewards come from success, and in terms of money, you do get to a point where you make up those deficits. If you can survive a period of your life earning slightly less, you might have to tailor your lifestyle to suit that 3-4 year period, will eventually pay off into financial gains. Whether people can sustain that in certain places, each individual will have their own answer to that. But, loyalty at some period of your career is essential. You cannot get to the top without doing a stint for an employer, because you need to learn.
Yeah,
you need to learn. No one, if you really want to become a senior leader, you have to commercially understand your business.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to teach you the commercial side of a business if you're only staying for 8 months, because there's a trust element. You're releasing numbers, you're releasing trade secrets, you're releasing information, processes, policies that set you aside. I've got off the topic of who moves when, because I tell all my competitors when people are moving and why we talent pool at certain times. I don't want to give certain information to employees that are only in my business a month or 8 months. I want to give it to people that I really think can bring value, make a return on investment, whether humans are working for us or we work for them, I don't know. But ultimately, everyone is trying to make a return for their own gain. We can't get away from that. We all are trying to push ourselves to live a life that we want. And I think with that, it's got to be a two-way thing. It's a topic that could go on for hours as well, because people are all different.
Yeah. I think that one of the keys is to make sure that you understand as a leader who is working for you and what's driving them.
Yep.
So
Massively drive. What motivates someone?
Is it money? Is it success? Is it power? Is it, I've said this to people, is it because, and I absolutely hate what I'm about to say, but is it that they want to post everything on social media?
Yeah.
So I had a manager work for me once that everything is going on Instagram, like this is how I set tables. This is how taking pictures of themselves, I always have to make sure that the glassware is sparkling. Now, when I first met this person, I just thought, truly, I was like, what? I can't say it, but everyone knows what I'm trying to say, right? What the hell, And then I actually realized that the best way to get the best out of this person is to tap into that, regardless of my own principle or belief with it, where I started to say, why don't you do that? Because you could put that on your channel. Why don't you do that? You could put that on your channel. And then what happens? Our relationship grew massively. And then what they started to learn and how they started to apply it in a way I wanted them to do it actually started to take a much better effect, because they were realizing, because I tapped into what was funding their drive, if that made sense. And I do think it's very important for managers and bosses to be able to look at people and go, right, what's really going on here?
relevant
you know.
content.
And when that time comes to an end with me, you've got to be happy to let people go. Like if someone that works for me leaves and goes and gets promoted, I'm more than happy.
Yeah.
If they sidestep, I get very annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, this is for me is a massive thing. You know,
If I can't promote you, I can't promote you. So I get it, but
yeah, I think you know, I feel for candidates in this sense a lot of the time. You work for a company, you resign, and there's just anger and frustration and animosity, and then referencing comes in, and it's not quite as good. And again, people all have their own lives to live. I wish employers could just thank people for their time if they've done a good job and wish them well, encourage them to move on, because we're in a very small market. Most people know someone that knows someone. It's very, but also that individual might go and learn new skills and come back to you. I'm a firm believer that wishing people well and seeing them, and that happens a lot here, that doesn't happen. Frustration, why are you leaving? And then anger or animosity towards a human. And
oh, listen, I totally agree.
It happens a lot here.
Right.
I just wish people could encourage people to go and move on, and the relationship stays strong. And it more often than not ends up with people annoyed that a good employee leaves. But you got to wish
if you can't give them what they want, you know, and if so, as long within reason. I mean, I'm a big fan of succession planning.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that happens with succession planning is if I'm looking for a restaurant manager and I've got 4 supervisors and my entire culture is leading and training them all to believe they can get the job because that's what's pushing people forward. You've always got to say the sky's the limit sort of thing. But then you go, right, okay, it's going to be you know, and then they get promoted and then you go and explain to the others what's happened. You've got to be prepared for all 3 of them to leave because you've trained them and led them to believe they're good enough for the next step. And if you can't give it to them, they're going to go look for it, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then if they all go and they move up and they move on, then if you've got the right succession planning, and it's not an ideal science, I don't want to sound like I've got this nailed, is you've got the next batch of supervisors ready to step through. You know, it's that.
And they may come back.
Yeah.
If you've done a great job and they respect your methods of managing them, then people do come back. And if you burn that bridge and the frustration as an employer goes across to the candidate or employee that you're not happy they're leaving, then you're never going to bring them back. And that effort, time, energy spent training them is lost to another business. And I think, you know, people, it comes back to what we do really, investment of time. Time is not often tangible to numbers and money and commercial elements of what you do. But if you can't retain staff, you're going to lose money as well. It, you know, as a business,
turnover.
I've flipped that round.
Yeah.
I've had examples throughout my career, and I think this is where corporate businesses maybe need to give their general management a bit more flexibility instead of just looking at what a company globally benchmarks and flexibility. Someone wants 100 dirhams more to stay and you're prepared to let them go over that amount, your loss is bigger than 100 a month. Cost of recruitment alone, just without using a recruiter, time alone will cost you more than that money. Yes, we talk about, oh, how fair is it to the other employees? Everyone knows what contract they sign. This is for candidates. You should be very aware of this. You're signing a contract. Don't sign it if you want more. Don't sign it. Ask for more. If you don't get more and you're not happy, don't take the job. Because when you then go complaining that someone else has got more money, they have got more money quite often for a reason. I don't believe employers should just hand out more money because someone's asking. But if they're a good employer, you value them as talent. Can we build a business around this person? Can they make us a better business? If they've been with you a year, why wouldn't you think of changing salary structure to keep people? Because it will cost you more in the long run. Employees that get disgruntled with that, I would say, first of all, how do they know what people are earning? I think it's, we all talk in the workplace, but candidates, employees, I urge you to be more confidential with what you earn.
Don't tell people what you earn.
It's an awful topic, money anyway in life. Don't tell people what you earn. It's your business.
Well, it can become very toxic in someone's head literally within a minute if you found out that X person is getting the same or more than you, and you don't, from your perspective, you don't think they're worth it, or you think you're worth more, but you don't do their job. You have no idea what's going on with them and their role.
Yeah,
All you've got is your opinion of it.
and employees sometimes don't tell the truth. So I would urge some people sometimes not to listen. People like to say they earn more for whatever reason. So when you look at that, I think when you sign a contract, you're signing a contract, honour it. You know, we have 2-year work permits here in the UAE. You're on a 2-year contract. I believe you are committing to 2 years, and you should be very happy to sign a contract and be prepared to earn that money for 2 years before leaving. That's how I feel. That's honour, that's ethics, and I think as an employer, I would probably consider, are you paying enough to retain someone for 2 years as well? It's a two-way thing, recruitment, all the time. But when you sign a contract, when you give a contract to someone, it should be binding. Everyone can read. Everyone knows what they're signing. I'm a firm believer that you know what you're doing when you sign a contract, both parties. But yeah, sometimes you do have to think about that recruitment cost. Also, knowledge is worth something. We'll just talk about F&B today. We're on that topic. But you have a restaurant and you have this venue that runs, and you've got local business that comes in, it's repeat business, you've got new business, you've got guests that stay in the venue, you've all these types of people, but there is a seamless way of running that venue. And if you've got someone that's been in the venue for 3 years, they're going to be so much more efficient than someone that's just come through the door. Take training costs aside, that individual will know how busy you are on a certain night, to what problems they're going to encounter, to what you can do to overcome those challenges. You can look at how many staff you've got in a particular area. You can allocate staff in a way that makes it more efficient. That, again, for an employer, that will save you money. You try and convince a finance director that savings can go on the top line. It can't, but ultimately you can create a more efficient business. So sometimes thinking outside the box, breaking a rule at a corporate level, encourage your GMs, a senior management, XCOM level, encourage your XCOM members to make those decisions. They know the business better than the person above. Mm-hmm. Give them that autonomy to do that, and give them the ability to actually make sure that their team are managed emotionally to actually accept that if that information does come out, someone's had a pay rise. But it comes back to our conversation very early on. Don't let it get to the point where someone's resigning.
Yeah.
It goes all the way back to that. You know, you should, in theory, be having conversations with your employer. Employers are really guilty of appraisals. You know, Centimeter, again, if anyone's not used it, I'm not here to promote that. It's a great tool. It's live data where you don't need to have a conversation. So if you don't like doing appraisals and you don't like the time it takes to do an hour or 2 hours per person once a quarter, and I think appraisals should be quarterly. If you really want to know how someone feels, I mean, daily, again, it's the way forward. If you can't do that, that's what Centimeter is. It's a daily appraisal.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, employers do not have meetings enough with their staff. And that's, again, pressure. That comes from whatever it might be, seasonal pressures. Each level, each tier down's got pressure. But if you're not talking to your staff, or you haven't got a tool that allows you to understand how your staff are feeling, and the other way around, you know, it's a chart. An appraisal's about the employee for me, not about the employer. An appraisal gives the chance for an employee to say how they feel.
Yeah.
An employer then gets to act on that. And appraisals need to be in an environment where an employee can feel comfortable talking about what they do and how they feel. And they have to trust the employer not to act on that data. That information is not a tool then to use against a staff member. It's there to improve everything, whether that be training. What does someone want from you? If you're not retaining staff, why? What do they want? Why are you not giving them? Something's wrong. It might be that your leaders are not right for your business. I see it so often. Get to a certain level, the individual's loyal. We love loyalty, but is it the right type of loyalty? Is one senior leader causing multiple talent to leave, and is the senior leader at the very top not aware of that challenge that's being created throughout the business? So
I mean, it's
a great topic.
Yeah,
different topic again.
I think the thing with appraisals, everyone should try to be aware of how they're supposed to be feeling.
Yeah.
Now, that's a very strange statement, but again, take Centimetre and the insights and stuff like that. There is, I can't remember them all actually, motivation, appreciation, positivity, and something I can't actually remember on the spot.
Engagement.
There's
a few.
But the thing is that as for me in my position, if all of mine are 100%, I think there's something wrong, because I'm not, my job sometimes is to tell people exactly how I feel about what they're doing.
Yeah. And
that can demotivate them. And then if they want to go on Centimetre and chuck me a bit of shade, it's like, fair enough. I get it. I recently terminated a manager who's, it was horrible. I don't like doing it. Sorry, my watch is making noises. I don't like doing that. I really, really don't, but it has to be done. And then my trust went down, and I'm like, now, instead of, again, going back to what I said earlier about running around trying to build trust with people, I'm a lot more experienced with Centimetre. I was like, no, fair enough. I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm not going to get negative about it, but I've done something that might actually shake people's trust in me, because that's just the nature of my job. Yeah. And like I say, the same with appraisals. When you have an employee who thinks that, I say this all the time, which is, if it's the 1 to 5 scale, if you come to work every day and you do your job, you arrive on time, you work hard, take your lunch, and you leave when you're supposed to, you're not doing anything above and beyond, and you're not doing anything worse, you're a 3.
Yeah.
But people think it's a 5.
Yeah.
And then when you put them down to a 3, they get all, no, well, we're really hard. And it's like, well, you do work hard, but you're just working normally, And I think that a big thing for everybody to understand is to try to gauge how you're supposed to be feeling, because you're not supposed to be feeling great all the time. It's work.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what? This has been great. I knew this was going to happen, that we've steered really off the topic of actually recruitment, but more into how people behave, which I love. What I would say, out of everything you've said, because I think this would be one for people to watch back kind of slowly, because so many insights, so many brilliant tips and pieces of advice. What would be the one thing, so to end with, what's the one thing from you being on the inside of recruitment, the best piece of advice for people like me, and the best people advice to people hiring, and the best people advice to people that want a job?
I would say from an employer hiring perspective, I think you receive a CV. Let's assume the CV is absolutely accurate and correct. I think invite people into interview that can do the job. I would hire people that you have a good feeling with, gut feeling. I think that bond with a human generally is really important. Can you work with them? If you think you can work with them, I think you've got a great chance of success. From a candidate looking to take a job, there's an element of feeling too. You have to feel like you want to work for them, but take a job that's right for you. Value yourself. Don't just take a job because you need money. I think sometimes you have to, but try and take a job that you feel is right for you. Money's important, but think about really what's important to you and what you value. And if that individual and employer is going to value you, you will enjoy your job. If you enjoy your job, I think you're happier as a person in life. And I think it's your life. You should be happy in life. That's what I'd say.
What a brilliant way to end, I have to say. Nick,
lovely.
Go over to the microphones.
Mind the wires.
Thank you very, very much for coming in. I wish you all the success in the future. And
thank you.
Let's say thank you so much for doing this.
Lovely. Cheers, Sam. Thank you.
Mate.